Okay, welcome to the next sculpting session. And now we are going to sculpt these stems and this bigger stems as well. We're going to sculpt these leaves and stems. Okay, let's go for some reference checking. And by looking at these references when it comes to pawn creation, you see there are a lot of directionality in these areas. You see, there are a lot of directional noise in these stem areas and in these parts as well. So I'm going to create some directional noise to support the sculpting of this session as well. So this belongs to the previous session. Let's add it a frame and go for the next one. So to find something directional, it's already in front of us. This is directional and this one is directional as well. Really depends on the type of situation that you're going for. Let's see this directional scratches, and this one seems more like it. Let's bring it down, and compared to these really there are something directional for something like wood, not for foliage creation. So I'm going for this, and the direction is all right. Let's remove some of the patterns. Okay, and now let's give it a slope blur grayscale. You know that it gives us a bit of a sculpting quality. So again, as always, clouds 2, samples up, min, and really a tiny one. We're going to be so subtle on this because this is already looking too noisy, and we really do not want to add a lot of noise. So in here, let's go give it a blur grayscale, quality up, and I want to give it just a tiny bit of blur. So let's take this and see what this one does. And I can go in here and select this directional noise scratches, and in here bring the intensity down, and on this output size I can really make this one a 2K by 512 to make it something like this that supports the directionality on these, because these are something rectangle like, and this is perfect rectangle and supports that. Okay, let's go, and instead of 0 and -2, I'm going for 1 in here and -1 in here, and you see right away it starts to make it 4K by 1024, which adds a lot more resolution. So let's take this and save it and call it leaves. Okay, and now let's go to ZBrush and select this. No, select this and hold down Shift, click it so that it hides everything. And it's obvious that we need to give this one Dynamesh on a higher resolution and some hand placed divisions as well to give this the ultimate resolution that we can work with. So let's go in here and select the alpha. Okay, let's go for these leaves and let's see if this one works or not. It's too strong. Let's bring the intensity down. And you see it starts to add a lot of good directionality noise in these parts. Okay, and because this is rectangle like, it's really perfect for adding those noise details that we want. But I feel like before doing anything, I need to add some bigger noises as well, because these noises are so shiny and so small that first I need to add some bigger noises, for example chipping some of these edges and then adding these noise, because you know the rule, always go for big and then medium and small. Okay, let's go for this trim smooth border, but on this one I really do not want to have that because it makes it too aggressive and I do not want that. So let's hit some of these edges so that it reads a lot better inside normal map. Just try to randomly add some noises. And to make sure that you really do not get any errors, make sure that this backface masking is turned on. Because if it's turned off and you start to add a lot of trim smooth border noise, you see it starts to go in a lot and destroy other side as well, because this mesh is relatively thin. And if you try to add a lot of noises, for example, of course using other brushes as well, if I try to add some noise or try to go crazy, it ruins that part as well. It's not doing that. But on these thin meshes have the backface mask on. Okay, let's go for trim smooth border and have the backface mask on. We have some edges to trim. Okay, let's go and continue hit these edges, because if later on we start to turn this one into normal map, let me pick this normal matte cap. You see it starts to add a lot of fine noise in there, so do not leave them untouched. It will make the normal map and the silhouette read a lot better. Okay, we only need some more edges to treat, and on these parts let me go on here and try to hit these edges. And this is what I mean really by messing up the topology. If you encounter to do something like this, just smooth it out using the shift to smooth the polygons to go into their places, and smooth it out just a bit to make it more like what it really should be, especially on these thin meshes when a lot of intersection might happen. And you see there are a lot of messiness in here. Just try to add the smooth brush and smooth the surface just a bit. Something like this. Just try to add a smooth brush. It will remove all of your problems. Okay, let's go and smooth these parts out. And again, in these parts, I need to start hit the edges. And try to mess the silhouette as well. For example, see in here, we try to break the silhouette to make this less look CG. And of course, we're not going to import these into Blender with the same resolution, because it's going to be a lot to work with into Blender. We will decimate these down into a reasonable number so that we're able to duplicate them around, because these are all belonging to the smaller portion. And when we added them into Blender, we want to make a lot of copies. So adding a bit of less resolution will help a lot. So let's go to the standard brush, and the same alpha has been selected for us, and have the backface mask turned on as well. And I start to add those directional noises in here. And of course you can choose to use the damp standard brush, but it takes a lot of time to sculpt like these. You need to sculpt a lot to get something like this, but we really, with some looking at references, we were able to create a noise that started to save a lot of headache in terms of sculpting on us. So the noise added as well, but to make it a bit more shiny, especially in the center place, I want to create a bigger stem in here using damp standard brush. And I'm using the damp standard brush but the reversed way, using Alt. Instead of going in, I'm sculpting in an additive manner. So this one adds that a stem that you see in the middle of the leaves in the palm tree. And this one will make a perfect normal map read as well. And you see it didn't turn the back face mask on, and it started to affect this area as well. And this one isn't a small one, I'm going to skip it, but try to have this back face mask on every time you try to sculpt, especially on these thinner areas as well. So this one done, I believe. Now let's go for the next one. Let's see all of them, and it's time for this one. Okay, let's select it and hold down Shift and right click in here to isolate it. And one more thing that you can do to hide some of the silhouette and delete it, and we have explored this technique, is holding down Control and selecting some parts. Let's go and create using this lasso instead of creating from that brush. Okay, select some of the portions and then you can sharpen the mask to make it really sharpen, but of course we need to add a bit of more geometry so that it's flawless. So let's go and bring the Dynamesh all the way up, and now it starts to look a lot better. So select some of the parts, try to randomly select from some parts. Okay, and now let's sharpen the selection and reverse the mask by holding down Control and clicking once on the screen. And you want to hit unmasked, hide unmasked, and it's going to hide the unmasked part for us. And then you hit delete hidden, and it's going to delete that geometry for us. And what we need to do is hit Dynamesh again, Control and drag, and it's going to fill those areas for us. And you see perfectly we altered the silhouette by deleting some of the parts as well. So let's go for trim smooth border and start to chip some of the edges. And of course you know that I have back face mask turned on. So by looking at these parts, I want to really give it a bit of a smooth and then chip from the surface. On these areas, first try to smooth it so that the polygons come together, and then chip away from the surface. It makes it more natural. And if you encountered something like this, it's not a problem really. Okay. And since these ones are going to be baked down into a single plane, I really do not care about the topology for now. Of course, on those bark pieces, we might want to make the topology right, but these ones I'm going to create some kits with them and then bake them down into a plane. So the geometry is not the first concern when it comes to these leaves, these palm leaves. Okay, we did this, and now it's time to go to the standard brush and this fine noise. Let's make it a bit sharper, and with back face mask, let's try to hit on the surface a bit. No, it's too sharp. Let's bring it down a bit. Okay, this is good. Or let's go back a couple of steps and start to add a bit of more resolution so that it's having more resolution. And try to add on every part in here. And you see that I'm not really adding anything to here because this part is going to be baked down into a single plane and it's not going to be seen whatsoever. So adding anything to that would be a waste. So this one is alright as well. And now let's bring the damn standard and try to add that fine stem in the middle of this. Okay, just some, and this one is done as well. Let's look at the normal. It's alright, it's going to be baked perfectly. So again, take backup from your scene and we're going to do the final stem. And I did this purposefully because I wanted something relatively new and something really old and something in between. And now let's select this one and hide everything else. And hit F to zoom on that. Okay, and now let's give this Dynamesh blur down and start to hit some of the edges. And I want this one to be something in between, not so old and not so new. Okay, I'm going to be aggressive on some parts and soft on some parts as well. So let's bring the standard brush again and use this noise. And without this noise, this course would have taken 100 hours to create because this noise really was a shortcut to a lot of sculpting. So let's bring the damn standard brush and do the middle stem carefully. Okay, this is done. And now I can safely go to the bigger stems. And I mean these two. Okay, it's time to isolate this one and start to work on it. So as always, Dynamesh it to make the topology right. Bring the blur down and start to first chip away from the edges so that we have a bit of better normal map read. And this belongs to the same family, so we're going to do the same thing on this as well. we're going to chip the edges and add that fiber noise. Okay, this really adds to the depth of the normal map and will make the normal map read a lot better. Just try to hit the edges carefully. Okay, and now we have to go back and redo the same thing for this down portion as well. And if the geometry messed up, really just smooth it out to make it look right. And this is the final portion of it. Okay, let's bring that a standard and try to apply this noise all the way to the other side. And first try to smooth it out and then apply this noise on parts where the geometry may be messed up. And try to paste the noise so that they follow each other and look natural. And without this noise, really, it would have taken a lot of time to create these. We would have to do a lot of damage standard and trim smooth border to get something like this. But by using a bit of noise, we were able to do a lot of save time in this sculpting process. So now that I'm looking at this, I really can do a lot of the work with this one only. Let me zoom on that. I can really take this one and delete it because it's not going to be needed and a waste of time because all of this is going to be baked down into a single plane and a lot of those details that we sculpt isn't going to be seen at all. So put your time on places where it makes most sense. Okay, now the bark kit is done. I mean the palm kit. The bark palm kit is done and the stem and leaves are done as well. We have now a couple of options. One of them is decimating these and bring them into Blender and start to shape the trees. Or the second one, which is better, I believe, is continue to sculpting all of these. And then when we made sure that these are finally sculpted, then we decimate them and bring them into Blender and start to do the work there. So I believe I'm going to the next path and starting to sculpting these as well. And when finished, bring this into Blender. Okay, for the next one, I'm going for the fern kit. And the fern kit, we are going to make it modular as well. We are going to sculpt the stem and then sculpt some individual leaves, and then we kit bash these leaves to create single clusters, and when from the clusters finished, we create the ferns themselves. So for creating the leaves, we need to drag these out to form this leaf shape. And for the stems themselves, they're going to be pretty ordinary cylindrical pieces. We're going to give them just some fibers to look good in normal maps. So let's go and start to create this. I'm going first for the stems themselves. Okay, let's select them and I'm going to Dynamesh it to fix the topology. Okay, blur down and dynamesh it. Okay, we got something like this, and I'm happy with it. And for now, I'm going to sculpt the edges a bit using the trim smooth border. Let me take this and start to hit these edges so that it reads better inside normal map. And then when finished these, I will start to add the directional fibers as well. Just for now, let's concentrate on giving the big shapes. And you can also make the brush size bigger to take the effect that you want really. Okay, this is good. And now let's give this something like that. Yeah, this is all right. And now let's go for the stand-up brush and I start to give this a bit of detail. And for the detail, let's bring the dynamesh all the way to 4K and control drag to give this more detail to work with. And of course, we need to divide it sometime to give this a bit more detail. Okay, this is good already for the planks, for the stems. Okay, and since this is going to be baked into normal map, I really do not want to make this over detailed. We're gonna just be some general noising thing in here. So let's give some of these noises a bit of trim so that it reads better inside normal map and we are not facing with something so noisy. Just be directional about the noise and hit in this direction. And since this is going to be baked onto a single plane, I'm not really concerning about the polygon in here as well. And of course the polygon distribution and things like that. Okay, this is about it. Let's go for the next one, which is this. And I'm going to do the same thing for this. And of course, normally when I'm sculpting in here, I try to displace the shape also using the move brush, but left the displacing and things like that for Blender. I do the displacing there. Okay, let's take this and I start to make the topology right. And I start to hit the edges. Of course, we need to bring the brush size down. And we're not doing anything to the back part since it's not going to be seen. So why wasting the time on a place that is not going to be seen ever? I'm just being so picky about this and something like that. And let's make this smooth so that it gets sharper. Okay, and now simply bring this down. And you have really no idea how much time this alpha has saved for us. And I've tried sculpting without alpha, it takes a lot of time. Okay, this one is wrong. Let's give this detail. Okay, something like this. And I'm happy with it. Okay, let's go for the next ones, which is these leaves. And for the leaf, I'm going to take these two and delete them. Since I'm going to, no, let's not delete them. Let's keep them. I create multiple sized leaves as well. So let's give this a bit of dynamesh, blur off. Okay, and now let's bring the move brush by hitting BM and V. Okay, this is the move brush. And we need to give that effect in here. I'm going to take these parts Let's make the brush size smaller and drag them to give this that shape of leaf. Dynamesh to make the polygon distribution alright, and I need to shape this a bit better and take from these part as well. Okay, and we have displaced this part, and that is not really a problem. I can really take care of that because it's not going to be seen. So let's give this a bigger Dynamesh. Let's go for 4K, and since this is a small mesh, it's not really going to add a lot of details, so I'm going to subdivide a couple of times. No, just one time, it's enough. And now let's go for a standard brush, and let's see if this alpha is working or not. No, it's already too strong. Let's bring it down. Let's just add something. And let's go in this direction as well. Okay, and now this is good for the first type of noise. And now let's bring the damn standard brush. We need to do some manual cleaning in here as well. I'm going to sculpt negative in here. And by negative I mean I'm holding down Alt and sculpting, because damn standard brush by default goes in. You have to hold down Alt so that it comes out instead of going in. Okay, and now let's sculpt from these and sculpt some stems, local stems on these leaves. And try to make the effect right. And since also this is going to be so small, so really small, you have no idea how small is this going to be. I'm not really adding a lot of detail. I'm just adding some surface breakups and things like that to make the normal read better. Okay, and this is about it. Let's add some last ones. And let's go for the other side as well. Try to hold down Alt so that the sculpting is coming out. Okay, now let's bring out some from here and one counterpart in here as well. So and one last one in here. Okay, this will do for the leaves, and I'm going to take these four. No, they are three. Let's pick up this. I'm going to delete these because I have fairly detailed that one, so I'm going to delete it. And we are going to delete this one as well, and instead duplicate this a couple of times. So I'm duplicating. Let's grab the move brush and bring this down, and again duplicate once more and bring down. I'm going to edit the shape and create multiple shapes, but the base is going to be the same. So let's take this one and go out of the move brush to draw mode. Okay, and now I'm going to bring the move brush, not the move gizmo, BMV, and now try to alter the shape of this leaf to something else. And take this one, let's make this one a bit shorter. Okay, something like this. Okay, I'm happy with it. And now let's visualize all of them. And now the fern kit has been completed as well. We're now going for the grass kit. And this grass kit is also going to follow the same rules as we had there. Let me take all of them and merge them down. Okay, once more, so that all of them belong to the same kit and I can really work on them without any problem. So let's go Dynamesh in the most possible resolution and give it a bit of Dynamesh. And now let's bring the standard brush and start to give this detail as well. So because I'm working on all of them at the same time, the noise that I paste here is going to affect some of theirs as well, and this is good and saving us a bit of time. Okay, just try to paste something in here. Okay, it's alright. And now let's bring the trim smooth border and start to hit these edges just a bit. And have the back face mask turned on as well so that you do not go to the other side. Okay, just try to be hitting these edges so subtle. We do not want to make it so obvious. And these ones also are going to be baked down into a single plane. So avoid over detailing and put your time and effort on the parts which are most obvious to the player's eye. Okay, this one's good. And I feel like I can hit these edges a bit to form that up better. Something like this, okay? And now let's go for another one and I start to chip the edges as well. And these two ones are going to be from the new kit. These are going to be new, and the couple of next ones are going to be chipped away just a bit, and the next ones are going to be pretty old ones, and I'm going to chip away a lot of them to make them look old and rusty. Okay, and this is good. And also let's hit this area as well, and this is good. And now I'm going to be a bit more radical on these two. Just bear with me, a bit of a sculpting and then We will kit bash these later on. Okay, some edges and from the surface as well to make them look old. And some more. And let's do on here as well. And from the next one, I'm going to hide from the geometry and delete as well. So let's go for the next ones. Looks like here there's a bit of obvious problem. So let's hit a smooth and okay, done. And a lot of the details that we add onto these would be inside Substance Painter when we decide to texture them. And we will add a lot of normal detail in there. So let's for now take some of the parts. Just try to be random about it. Okay. And now sharpen the mask, reverse the mask, hide on mask, and delete hidden. And now Dynamesh again. Make sure that the blur is down so that you do not lose a lot of this sculpting data. Okay, just drag, and now the Dynamesh is going to fill the gaps for us there. Okay, this is done. And now one thing, I found out that these edges are good. When the grass is decayed, the edges are so harsh and so sharp. I mean these chipped edges. But let's see if I can smooth it out so that it reads better inside normal map. And then hit the smoothness with the trim smooth border to give it some detail. Just something like this. Because if it's so sharp, it's not going to read well in the normal map. Just make it a bit smooth and you're good to go. So that the polygons come together as well so nicely. And here as well. And there are just only these parts remaining. And this part. Okay, done. And now we have finished sculpting these grasses. And now let's visit all of them. And only this banana kit has remained. And again, as always, I'm going to hit some of these edges and sculpt. Let me bring them all. For the stem, I'm going to hit some of the edges, and for the leaves, I'm going to make one and then detail that out to create the rest of them to save a lot of time sculpting. And the sculpting can be really daunting sometimes, so we have to keep energy and work for other places as well. So let's bring the Dynamesh resolution up and Dynamesh this, and we have good amount of geometry to work with. And we need to make the edges a bit trimmed. Just a tiny bit. Okay, this one is alright. And now let's go for standard brush and try to bring those fibers in. Okay, just a couple of more remaining and done. Okay, and now let's go for the leaves. And for the leaves, let's take these three and I'm going to delete them because when I create one, I'm going to duplicate that and give it detail as well. Okay, and this one and this one. We're only left with this. Okay, this one of course needs the geometry to be fixed because there's a little bit of geometry missing in here. So let's go all the way to top and dynamesh it. So the geometry is good. And now I'm going to add these details right away because it has a lot of directional fibers. Okay, and I found that adding fibers in here will also result in some fibers in here. So I'm going to mask this part out. So the better option for masking something like this is the rectangle. So I only mask this part and I start to bring these directional fibers in this direction so that they do not affect that place. They are only going in this direction and I'm pretty happy with. So this is good for this one. And now hold Control and single click. If you drag, you're going to dynamesh, but I'm going to only keep a single click. And now let the fibers go in this direction. Okay, and now let's see what we have here, and it's perfect fine. Some fibers are going in here and some fibers here as well. So let's bring the damn standard brush and try to bring something in between. Hold down Alt so that we get this in here. We want it to be out, not in. Okay, this is about it. And now let's add some directional fibers that go in the same direction as these in here as well. Because this is something that I've looked at the references and I saw that there are some bigger things going on here. So let's do them right here. And let's go for the other side as well. Let's take from here, hold down Alt so that they are coming out. Okay, something like this. And I'm going to be pretty symmetrical on this because on the references I believe it's pretty symmetrical. Okay, now this is done and I'm going to take some duplicates from this. This is the main one and let's take a duplicate and go for the move brush, move gizmo, So bring this down and let's visit this so that we know what we are doing. One copy. I'm doing 4 variations on this. And now let's start working on this only and go to draw mode, and we need to paint some parts, of course with masking. Okay, let's go for the lasso is the best of them, I believe. And try to paint some parts in. Okay, and some counterparts in here as well. Just hold down Control and do not leave it. Okay, make them sharp and hide this and delete hidden. Now hit Dynamesh. And Dynamesh is going to fill some of the gaps, and I do not want that. And I'm going to keep this the way it is because it's going to be baked into a plane just like with this information and nothing in between. So I'm going to keep this as the way it is and I'm not going to fill the gaps. Okay, let's go for the next one. And again, I'm going to mask some parts out. Not as aggressive as this one, but something in between. Okay, let's bring the lasso brush and try to pick some of the parts to be deleted. And some parts from this as well. Sharpen, and let's not sharpen them for now. Reverse the mask, hide on mask and delete hidden. And I'm not going to also Dynamesh it because it's going to fill some of the unnecessary gaps which I really do not want. Okay, and now let's see all of them, and I believe this is enough for the purpose, and I can delete this one as well. So let's delete this, and I believe we have sculpted enough on the foliage part. And now that I'm looking at it, I'm pretty happy with the result that we're getting. And now we're going to decimate these because the poly count is so high. And when we import this into Blender, because we're going to be doing a lot of kit bashing, instead of getting 50 millions, we're getting something like 300 millions of polygons when we kit bash them, and even more. So I'm going to decimate these to a reasonable number and import them then into Blender. So I created a new scene and called it decimated so that later on I can go back and do any changes on the main ones if I needed to. So let's take them all, and I feel like I can merge these down. On their groups. For example, these barks being the same group so that I can merge them easily. And I can decimate them only using a single click. Okay, let's take this one. This one is now 7 million polygons. Let's go to Blender, to Decimation Master and hit Preprocess Current. It's going to take a bit of time and then decimate this for us. Of course, the decimated version is still going to be high poly, so we're going to make another decimated version of this for the low poly so that we start texturing that inside Substance Painter. Of course, we keep a high poly one and bake that onto a low poly. Okay, the operation completed. Let's, okay, looks like it broken. I try to pre-process, and now let's hit decimate. And now it's going to take a bit of time to decimate the mesh. And it converted to something like 1.5 million. I'm pretty happy with how this is going. Let me look at the results, and the result is perfectly fine. And I'm going to keep this for now, and later on I'll create another low poly version of this. So let's go for other places as well. So I'm going for this kit. Let's merge them down, merge down, down, and down. Okay, this one is the same kit pre-process. Since it's a lot cheaper, it's going to compute a lot faster. Okay, decimate, and now I'm getting pretty good result on this. Let's go for another kit, which is this one, and merge them down, and let's pre-process again. From now on, all you need to do is pre-processing them and hitting decimate. Of course, instead of using this, you can drag a number in here. For example, bring a custom number in here, and it's in thousand. This 300 means 300,000. And hit custom, it's going to pre-process and decimate at the same time for you. So that option is available as well. So hit decimate again, and we should get a pretty good number, which is good. Now let's select the beneath one, and on this one I'm going to merge it down, and let's see, I take this and merge down as well so that we get this kit, this banana kit, as the same mesh. Okay, and now let's hit pre-process again, and when we're finished I'm going to hit decimate again. Okay, now this one merged down without really losing a lot of quality. Okay, and the last one is this grass patch, and I feel like it's already a good number. Let me look at it. I can come down without losing any quality, and that's a good news. Let it calculate and decimate. Okay, we come down to a really good number, and I'm happy with how the results we're getting. Okay, now we're left with the bark, the fern kit, the palm, the banana kit, and the grass kit. Okay, and we have come from something like 50 million into a 3 million, which is a good thing. But there's some more thing need to be done. On these fern, grass, these palm leaves, and these banana kit, they are all going to be baked down into a single plane, and I'm not really caring about them for now. Let's hide them. We are only left with this bark kit, which is actual 3D geometry. So let's select this, and I want to duplicate this one. And as for duplication, let me delete this first, and now split this to parts, because I want to make a separation between these meshes. I really do not want them to be so close. So let's go to move brush and try to bring this all the way to here, and this one as well, so that they are separated. Okay, and now I'm going to make them united by merging them down, and now duplicate. Let's hide the first version, which is the high poly, and try to save it first. and decimate this. We're going to bring this so down because this is going to be a low poly, and we're going to duplicate this. For example, for a tree, we might take something like 100 of these to make a tree. So I'm going to bring this to a reasonable amount. So let it calculate, and now decimate again. We've come down to this number, but we can go also down more. But let's bring this up, and without actually selecting this high poly, I'm selecting this low poly, and in this menu, in the subtool menu, into the project, hit project on. It's going to project the high poly geometry onto this and making it the same as the high poly geometry wise. And it makes sure that there's no room between the high poly and low poly. You can already see that. Okay, and now let's decimate again. I'm going to go much more down from this because, as I said, we're going to copy this a lot of time, and we're going to have a bit of harder time if the polygon is so high. So let's take this and project again. And now let's look at the low poly. It's still looking high poly. I'm going to go another step down. Okay, something like this should be good. And now let's take this, select this, and makes the high poly visible, and project again, and it's going to make it best. Try to project the mesh onto that. Okay, I'm feeling like this one is good enough. You can go a step down, but I feel like I can keep this. It's good enough for my purpose. So let's visit this. Okay, it's all right. And now I'm selecting all of them, and I do export to Blender. Okay, let's export, and I'm going for FBX and create a new folder, name it whatever you can remember, and call this foliage kit. And in here I'm going to select all triangulated, and every setting is in here is alright. So hit export. It's going to take a bit of time to export this into Blender. Okay, exported, and now let's see what we can do in Blender. Here we are in Blender, and I'm going to export this import, I mean. Okay, it imported perfectly fine without any problem. And let's look at them to see what we're going to do. I'm going to take these and bake them into a plane. Take these, bake them into a plane as well. But for the fern kit, I'm going to make some meshes and bake those meshes into a single plane. And then the bark, leaves, and a stem, I'm going to make meshes with these and bake them into a single plane. But these ones are actual geometry, which I need to do using the old method of baking high poly into low poly. So I'm going to first take care of these and then go for other ones in here as well. So let's select them, Alt S to bring the pivot onto its place. Okay, and now let's hide everything but these two. I need to select this. Let me go to wireframe view, and we have selected the high poly. Let's go into edit mode. By clicking 3, we are going to edit mode, and it's going to take a while because it's a high poly mesh. And as I told you, Blender is a bit lacking when it comes to working with high poly geometry. And hit P and separate by loose parts. And because they are loose parts and not connected to each other, it's going to create 4 meshes in here for us. Okay, done. And now let's select a low poly as well, which is this one. and go into edit mode, hit P and loose parts again. Okay, now we have meshes. Let's go back another level. Now we have a couple of meshes for each one low poly and one high poly. And we're going to do the UV on low poly and leave these alone and go for other kits as well. So let's select every low poly in here. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let's go there. I'm going to create a UV map for them. Just select them and create a UV map for them. And because these are something like those nanite meshes, I'm really not caring about the UV creation so much because it's a lot high poly and the UVs are going to be automatically fixed. So let's bring up the UV editor and select this and try to select a seam that is a good starting point. I believe this one is a good one, and try to pick up the shortest path around the mesh. And I'm going to separate the top part from this middle part so easily. So instead go from here to here. And it's nothing more than a cylindrical piece, but a bit more complex, just like the cylindrical piece that we unwrapped before. So all the way to here and mark seam. And I'm going to separate these down part as well. Only try to be so rough about it. Really do not want to be so perfect. Because the geometry is so much, the seam is going to be hidden and not be seen anyhow. So another one, let's go from here all the way to here. Click and mark seam, and we want something in between, so I'm going to select the seam to be here so that it's not so visible. It's a crack area and not going to be seen very much, so make this one a seam as well. Select this, unwrap. Okay, this one is one island. Select this, unwrap. This one another one. Select this and unwrap. Okay, we have 3 pieces for this. Okay, let's go for another one. This is basically the procedure. We're going to make each one a 3 island piece. Okay, let's go wrap around it. And not be so perfect about the UV placement. We want something so simple. Mark seam, and from here all the way to here, mark seam as well. And now let's select the bottom part. And I believe this is the only time we're going to create UV4 foliages, because they are going to be automatically baked onto a plane and we're not really messing with a lot of UV creation. And that's a good thing. We really do not have to create a lot of UVs, and UV is normally a daunting task to do. But this one is so natural, it makes a UV creation a bliss really. Go from here and from here to here, okay? Mark seam, and now select this, unwrap, select this, unwrap, and select this and unwrap. Okay, we have 3 pieces right over here. Let's go for the next one. And I'm going to follow the curvature of the geometry to guess where to put the seams on. And the less UV you have, the less UV island the better the process is going to be and more enjoyable. Okay, on here as well, let's come for this part. Let's come from here all the way to here and mark seam and put this one in here because it's a crack, and one of the best places to hide the seam is by using the crack parts in your geometry, natural seam hiders. Now let's go from here. Mark seam, and now we can do the islanding. Select, unwrap, and unwrap again. And let's go for these ones, and this is no different than the previous ones. I'm only going to select the edges based on the curvature of the geometry and pick the shortest path using control. And if I was wrong, I really go back a couple of steps to pick a better path to go. Okay, and this one marks seam, and I'm going to put the seam and hide it in this crack. And hopefully this is the last of them. And I'm going to make this a single texture set of its own because I believe it's worth the texture that we give it, because I want it to be so high quality, and I'm not going to make it a shared texture with others as well. I'm going to make only a single texture for the bark because it's the most visible in the tree, and I'm going to make the most texture space for it as well. So let's select this, unwrap, select this one, unwrap, and select this one and unwrap. Okay, I believe we've got enough, and now let's select all of them, and using these four I'm going into the UV edit mode and hitting pack UV to pack them inside a single 0 to 1 UV space. And looks like there's a bit of work to do, and I believe let's select all of them, and this is somehow good, and we can do better, of course. Let's select this and hit pack again, and looks like this is the best that it can do. And let's give it a texture using the UV toolkit to see the textile density. Okay, let's inspect them, and it's alright. The textile density is alright all across, and I'm pretty happy with it. And let's remove all of it and go a step back. Let's select all of them, I mean the high poly and low poly, shift Q and give it a material. Of course, this shift Q comes from the material utility add-on, and I hope you have installed it. Okay, let's give them bark and hit OK, so that all of them have the bark material on them, because when baking on substance we need these materials to be in their place. So this one is for the bark. Let's give them the collection bark, and I can simply hide the collection. And now let's go for other ones as well. So I will do these inside the next chapter, and I hope to see you there. Okay? See you in the next lesson.